Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? My mic working? Great. As Sam said, my name is Natalie Perera. I'm the Executive Director of an organisation called the Education Policy Institute. And the aim of what my organisation does is to ensure that there's better, more evidence-based policy making in education in this country, and particularly for the most disadvantaged children and young people. But more importantly than that, today I'm also a trustee of Causeway Education, and very delighted to be here amongst all of you and a very esteemed panel here. So what we'll do is I will go from left to right down the panel and give each of you an opportunity to introduce yourselves and maybe spend about 2 or 3 minutes talking about what you think some of the challenges are in relation to partnership working, whether that's between schools and universities or FE colleges or indeed the third sector. And then I might take chair's privilege and ask 1 or 2 questions myself and then open it up to the floor. I'm very conscious that it's the session before lunchtime and I don't want to lose too many of you towards the end. So starting first with you, Femi.
Okay. I think it's almost afternoon now, but good morning, everybody. My name's Femi Bola. I've worked in, I suppose, the widening partition space for about 20 years. And I've been interested really in the transition from higher education, of widening participation students from higher education to employment. And I was asked to talk about the challenges within that kind of space. And really, it's in terms of working with partnership, it's first of all, working with academic colleagues I found quite challenging because sometimes I found that academic colleagues found it difficult to see that they were key players in that transition point, that they were really important. The students really trust academic colleagues, and that goes for teachers as well. Even though it may not seem like it, you are gods in their world, and everything you say, they believe. And in terms of in making that transition to employment, academic colleagues sometimes found it difficult to make a clear connection between the curriculum that they were delivering and the skills that employers were looking for and the attitudes and behaviours that employers were looking for. So making that curriculum relevant to especially the widening participation students who didn't have perhaps people in their homes to make that connection for them. So there was a challenge there. Also, in terms of making partnerships with employers, there was a challenge in that space in terms of employers often having fixed ideas about what a good graduate looked like, what a good graduate sounded like, what a good graduate had studied and where they had studied, and also what they'd had experience of, the experience outside the classroom, including skiing, rugby, cricket, and golf sometimes. So what employers were expecting students to be able to come equipped with and able to talk about wasn't always what those students would have had experience of. And I know that from having students say to me, or graduates saying, oh God, we're going on a skiing trip, you know, and it was like, find a dry slope. Also, that students themselves were a challenge, because after all, we are quite happy to label people widening participation, but they have no idea that's what they are. As far as they're concerned, they're people from Hackney or Derby or Birmingham or Wolverhampton, and they were going into this transition either into higher education or into employment, thinking that they were just people and not in this special category that they'd been put in. And they were working really, really hard to support themselves often, because they are widening participation students, through higher education, and therefore they didn't have time to do extracurricular things that we felt were good for them. And so they weren't able to make use of some of the things that are available in higher education because they just didn't have the time. And even though they deserved these interventions and they should have had these interventions, their lifestyles didn't always allow them to take advantage of it. So I think for me, those are the challenges around that transition point.
Thank you, Femi. Sarah.
I'm Sarah Young. I work at a charity called Impetus PEF. Our role in the sector is to help improve the life chances for disadvantaged young people. We do that through working with charities and schools to help them think about how to be most impactful in their work. So I want to take the opportunity today just to talk a little bit about what I think makes a really powerful partnership between schools and universities or charities who are looking to provide individualised support to young people, to help them, to disadvantaged young people, to help them improve their attainment so they are in a position to be able to go to university if that's something they want to do. Because it is a tall order to have a third party come into a school with a limited amount of time to work with a young person and really change their attainment. So in the dream world, 3 things happen. The first is about setup. When the charity or the partner is starting working with a young person, they know the needs of the young person and they know the context of what will be happening in the school. They know what grade the young person needs to get and they know what that really means in practice. What skills, what knowledge, what exam techniques do they need to have to be able to get that grade? And where are they working at? What support are they going to need to get them there? So they know exactly what the young person needs, and they have a good understanding of what is going to be happening in the classroom, what is happening alongside them, what does the curriculum look like, what's being taught when. Is it algebra this half term, trigonometry next half term? Is it a maths mastery approach, which might mean things are being taught in quite a different way to when potentially they were at school? So those two things are really about getting, when that partner gets in the room with a young person, then they're not just starting with a clean sheet of paper, with a white sheet of paper, having to elicit this information out of the young person, given that they have very little time probably with them overall. So that's the first thing. The second is really when the support actually starts, about making sure there's a regular dialogue back and forth between that person who's providing the support and the school. What's happening in the classroom, what's happening out of the classroom, has there been an assessment recently or one coming up that can really inform practice on both sides. So, and then the final thing is actually after the work is over, it's really important that the school feeds back to the partner on actually, did it work? Did the young person get the grade they need to get into university? And with that information, the charity or the partner is then in a great position to be able to look at what is working, what isn't working. Are there some types of young person they're not very good at supporting? Is their English support not good, but their maths is really strong? Are they better when they work in year 10 or year 11? And then it's then on them to really report that back to the school. What's the impact of the partnership on the school? Are they getting value for money? Is that something they should carry on? They need to be in a good position to be able to decide whether to pursue that. So, and that kind of knowledge is really about making the partnership work, because otherwise it is a bit like golfing in the dark. We're all playing golf, but who knows where the balls go? Do the kids go to university? Do they not? How do we know how to adapt? So those are my dream 3 things. We know that's really difficult to make that happen. We know it's a big ask for teachers to get them to make time on top of a very busy workload to be able to do that, and also on the partner side to be able to have the resource to be able to work so closely with the schools. So what I'm interested in is things that we can do that are going to increase the investment that both parties can make in the partnership, because I think that's the sort of thing where you get true leverage in a partnership and where we're going to make meaningful change for young people in terms of their attainment.
Thank you. Nikki.
I'm Nikki Lane, Assistant Principal at East Coast College over in Norfolk and Suffolk. It's for wellbeing and support for students. So I was asked to talk about the further education perspective. So I just wanted to start off with a few facts about FE. Of the 273 colleges in England, 181 of those are general further education. We're providing technical and professional education to our students, over 2 million students in England, to enable them to progress on to university or higher level vocational qualifications. 16,000 14 to 15-year-olds are enrolled at colleges. Over 300,000 people are studying apprenticeships in colleges, and the majority of these colleges are actually providing higher education, with 151,000 students studying HE. So you can see that FE plays a vital role. So who are our students? 1 in 5 students in FE have a learning difficulty or disability. 1 in 5 have received free school meals. More students studying higher education in FE colleges are educationally disadvantaged than those studying in universities. From an East Coast College point of view, in the academic year 16-17, we had over 1,600 referrals to safeguarding and wellbeing. And And if you kind of take that in the context that 75% of mental health problems actually are established by the age of 24, you can see where we're putting kind of a lot of our energy. 80% of our 16 to 18-year-olds did not come into us with GCSE Maths and English at grade A to C. And 20% under national average for residents with a level 4 qualification or higher is kind of the demographic that we're working in. We're in the top 10% deprived areas nationally, and organised crime is increasing, and alongside violent and sexual assault in our area has gone up by 100% in over 3 years. So all of these things actually influence the narrative of our community. And these narratives are not always ready to listen to positive facts. We have that real responsibility to be tackling social mobility. This is in no way an attempt to kind of put excuses in any way. What I'm underlining is the complexity of FE and the importance of having high expectations, raising aspirations, and setting positive targets for our students. My point is that many students do not actually have the confidence to aspire. The FE is packed full of talent. We've got to unlock that talent, and this is where our partners step in beside us, and they play a crucial role. FE works alongside employers, partners in wellbeing and community links. These partners are flexible, they have excellent networks, they're either no cost or low cost. They share resources, they're consistent, and they really understand local need. Challenges are faced around funding streams and capacity, and every partner lost or resources reduced due to funding cuts has an impact on our young people. In further education, we have a duty to our communities, our young people and our employers to facilitate that confidence that allows young people to see what aspiration means to them, see that it is safe, it's exciting, and that they have the talent, strength and resilience to make and realise goals. We must help them demonstrate their potential to employers, raise social mobility and chip away at those narratives that are holding some of our young people back. I wish to leave you, as this part of the discussion, as a call to action really, that if you're already working with your local FE college, thank you, it's really appreciated because it makes a massive difference. If you're not, then please do get in contact with your local FE college because they will really welcome your experience in supporting our young people, and together then we will support the next generation of our workforce.
Thank you, Nikki. Anand.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, Brightside is a social mobility charity, and we provide online mentors to young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. We've been around for about 15 years now and cover every region in England, and this year reached the milestone of mentoring our 100,000th young person. I've been really pleased to hear the emphasis on partnership today, actually. It reflects our experience as an organisation. Everything that Brightside does and has done over the years has been to work in partnership with other organisations. We couldn't do what we were trying to do without working in partnership with other organisations. So we work with something like 100 organisations at the moment, including universities, leading businesses like Allen & Overy, other charities such as Sutton Trust that we've heard about today, as well as large employers like the NHS. And we cannot tackle the huge challenges that we've been talking about this morning, whether it's around aspirations and realising aspirations, not just raising aspirations, about IAG, information, advice and guidance and decision-making, progression, attainment and success. All of these areas require lots of different stakeholders to be involved and to be working in harmony. And I've been very pleased to hear, as I say, the emphasis on partnership today. When I first started in the non-profit sector many years ago, I had a rather cynical director that once defined partnership to me as a suppression of mutual hostility in the pursuit of joint funding. Now, I think that clearly that isn't the spirit that we should have, or the spirit today, because working in partnership, as we all know, is why I suspect we're here in this room, improves efficiency through pooling resource and expertise. But I've been asked to talk about challenges in this part of the discussion, so I'll spend a few seconds on those, and I suspect we all live these challenges day to day. So partners will have different incentives. As Michael said, we need to be responsive to each other's needs. So, for example, In Brightside's world, we may be commissioned by a university or by a consortium of universities to run a project. They will be accountable for its success. Schools, on the other hand, who are key stakeholders in that project, may be more concerned about the time and resource involved in running a project, particularly if you're taking those students out of the classes, you're not delivering whole class interventions, and what impact they may have on students. It's important that these areas are aligned. Partners will have different missions. Brightside's mission is to ensure that mentees, the young people we work with, make confident and informed decisions about their future. Not necessarily a specific decision about attending university or a specific university. And this can be different for universities, as Chris mentioned in the session just beforehand. You have the tension of running outreach schemes and dispassionate, I think that was your phrase, dispassionate schemes in tandem with recruitment requirements as well. We need to be alive to these. You will have different infrastructures. Organisations like mine will be smaller, more flexible than universities. In university and corporate environments, you may require multiple levels of sign-off, particularly if you're dealing with consortia. And the final point that I would make is that there's a big difference between partnerships where you have an organisation that is the commissioner and thinking of others as suppliers, and joint, genuine partnership and collaboration, which is joined up. I think in our experience, a commissioner-supplier type of approach leads to inefficiency and can damage a project's delivery and success.
Thank you.
Great, I'm Simon Pedley, I work for Ormiston Academies Trust, and I'm their post-16 most able advisor. We run about 33, since I checked this morning, I might be wrong, academies between Grimsby and the Isle of Wight. They might have opened one in the last half an hour. And as part of that strategy, part of that work, we work with a lot of external providers to support our work. And what I wanted to do is to very briefly talk through 3 features, I think, of partnerships that are sustained. So partnerships that survive changes in staff, because that has been a issue in some instances of sort of working with certain partners. And I mean changes in staff within schools. So the first question really is, does the provider support on a strategic level help for the schools as institutions to meet sort of government Ofsted metrics, as well as being valued by teachers in and of themselves? And as an example, we work with DebateMate, and a lot of teachers love DebateMate. I really love DebateMate because they did debating in school. They think it's really important, and sometimes setting up debating club is what teachers went into education to do. However, from a sustained point of view, that is not tremendously useful. Where that has been much more successful in keeping a sustained collaboration between our academies and DebateMate is where the SLT as a school have built that provision and that partnership into a strategic goal. So potentially underperformance of what year 10 boys in English, this could be then a key partnership to improving their outcomes, as measured by, influenced by Progress 8 scores, Department for Education and Ofsted rules. And I think while there has been some, and I want to give a reason for optimism after these, I want to be very, very brief when I do it though, destinations were not as important historically, but they are now, given some of the changes to some of the post-16 accountability measures. And I've read a number of different Ofsted reports now, partly influenced as well by Ofsted reports for our most able provision that reference specifically IAG. And there have been academies Ofsted reports that have been poorer than they should have been because the IAG provision, certainly around universities, was not good enough. So there is a reason why SLT need to buy into partnerships around HE, but you need to make sure, and it's very important to make sure that that relationship is not dependent on a single teacher, but is bought into strategically at an SLT level. Secondly, do providers generate an output that significantly affects school culture, sort of sense of itself or perception in the community? Because that increases the cost of not collaborating with that partner in the future. So as an example, on the Isle of Wight, our sixth form there has had 0,0,0,0,0 offers to elite Oxbridge medical schools historically. This year they have 5 offers. And a significant, although not total, reason for that is that they all did the Brilliant Club last year. And again, I would say that was the entire reason, but I think it was very important. That has dramatically affected how that sixth form sees itself, how the community sees that sixth form, and as a result, and having seen similar things over a number of years in the past, I would have every reason to believe that that partnership would sustain because it's part of a much wider culture, even though the number of students who actually did that intervention was relatively small. And I think for people in this room, I think improvements in destination schools, more than not as much maybe as grades, but more than almost anything else I can think of, does affect how schools see itself. So certainly where schools have sixth forms, improvements in destination measures really does affect school culture. So I think that's a real reason for optimism. And finally, from a MAT point of view, we will support academies working with organisations where there are significant returns to scale. So where is there a difference between what you can achieve with one school doing one outcome and where you've got a number of different schools working together on a similar outcome? So we managed to do a Ormiston-wide debating competition last year, again working with debate. We do work with other people, these are just quick examples. And the reason we chose to do that was because there was a return to scale to working with that particular organisation. That's why we supported it. I have an email sitting on my phone that I will deal with over lunchtime, asking me to, can we get a group of our academies who are in the same region together to do their local NCOP thing all together and all in one place. That's brilliant, that makes complete sense, and we will make sure that we facilitate that. So those are the three main things I think that make for sustained partnerships. Does it operate strategically? Does it lead to a change in school culture? And from a MAT, are there returns to scale?
Great, thank you. Some fantastic points raised by each of you there. I'm going to start by posing a further question. I might just come to 2 or 3 of you for this before we open it up. And that is running a research organisation whose aim is to use that to then improve policy for education. We're particularly interested in identifying the things that work. And so I would be interested in views from some of the panel about how they go about evaluating either the work that your organisation does or in schools, the impact of the whatever intervention you're working with on student outcomes. So I might start with you, Anand.
Sure. Measuring impact is something that's very important to us for a number of different reasons. One, we want to be sure that what we are doing is effective and is cost effective. I think there's also a moral case as well that when we're asking young people, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds, to spend their time on programs, we should know whether they're making a positive difference or not. So we have spent a lot of time at Brightside working on this. We've put in place quality and impact frameworks to measure the effectiveness of our programs, and that's so there's the kind of quantitative side of it, and that is supplemented by lots of qualitative information as well. We're just in the process of commissioning our first externally delivered impact assessment of what we do as an organisation. It'll be the first time that we've done that we've collected enough data to do a statistically significant survey of what we're doing. And then as well, in addition to that analysis, we're also building an impact performance management system, and then the outcomes that we're aiming for will drive what we do. In terms of key success factors for us that we've identified through our day-to-day work, through initial analysis, longer-term partnerships and relationships, particularly with the schools, are crucial, understanding their needs. So we've been working to try and move away from this project-based model, this one-off intervention that you go away and they never hear from you again like a silver bullet. So we've developed a schools network to build longer-term relationships with schools. And also we know that multiple interventions are what work, so we've developed an alumni network to keep in touch with the people that we're working with and to connect them with the mentors on our database as well. So those are two of the things that we are doing, but it's important that you have impact and evaluation at the heart of what you do for ongoing and dynamic quality improvement and refining your model in light of what the data is showing you.
Thank you. Simon, from a school perspective.
Yeah, I think evaluation is a bit of a perennial issue. Like if you ask me what leads to increases in GCSE attainment, I can get all of the GCSE results from all of our academies, and we can work out who did what last year, and we can put in their Ofsted grades, their prior attainment on entry, all of that stuff, and we can run it through our own regression model and go, that thing seemed to work, that thing did not seem to work. However, there are very, very few interventions where that is their stated goal. And we do not have metrics for the vast majority of things that we want to try and evaluate. So from our point of view, looking at how we are going to evaluate partnerships that we work with, we are aware of a problem, but given that a lot of our partners will have different sort of metrics, we centrally find it then very difficult, and to be honest, to sort of evaluate properly the effectiveness across a range of different things. And I think that's something that we are working to address, by the way, and don't tell my bosses I said that. Mm-hmm. But finally, I think as well, the issue where that comes from, I think, as well, is the fact that there are a lot of different reasons why people want to do certain things. And a lot of our academies will work with the same partners, say. So 5 academies might work with the same partner, but they've all got different reasons why they want to do that, which actually means that going, did this partner manage to achieve X outcome? Well, they didn't even agree to start with on what the outcome was they were trying to achieve, despite working with the same partner. So in terms of evaluation, the lack of sort of a standardized outcome set, so why are you choosing this partner, do you want to achieve this, and the lack of real metrics to be able to do that, I think that exists in general across the sort of public sphere, is making evaluation challenging. But I am very optimistic that there are a lot of very innovative companies coming up with ways of measuring social and emotional life skills that I think is really exciting and really interesting. We're talking to Impact Ed about their measures and their metrics. I'm really interested to see where that goes, but I think there are some issues at the moment.
Thank you, Simon. I'm going to come to Nikki for a perspective on FE, and if it's okay, I'll then open it up to the audience.
Mm-hmm. I think from an FE point of view, certainly in our college, I think kind of partner colleges are very similar. It's a 3-pronged approach, maybe. So it's the overall college data. So looking at where attendance is at, where retention is at, and progression. Kind of starting to boil that down towards the individual at the beginning of that process. We look at safeguarding and wellbeing data, for example. So where we have over 70 partners that we work with at our college, particularly around safeguarding and wellbeing. So actually the students that they're working with, how is data actually changing across the year? So if we're putting extra work into housing provision support, for example, are we seeing positive changes in the number of students who are coming forward with that as an issue? Each individual is has that impact on their individual attendance, their retention, their progression, makes up our whole. And I think that kind of leads into the student voice probably being the largest bit of information really that we would use to make decisions on how effective our partnerships are. So we ask our students in a number of ways whether or not partnerships are effective. And then actually an individual student might then kind of be highlighted, if you like, within the college about the development and the journey that they've travelled. Other students see that support that they've received or the journey that they've made and actually start to, that kind of peer support starts to kick into play and have a really, really positive impact. For example, we had a young person who his attendance was about 20-30%. He had some mentoring from a partner. We put in mental health support from another partner in place. So we had a real package around him. 9 months after we started doing that work, his attendance was rising. And in September last year, he actually was one of the, he started to introduce at a mental health summit that we had in college to about 200 partners in a room. His own story, and it was really, really positive, and the impact it's had on him is huge. So it's really, I think the base of it is that start at the individual, and then they then kind of impact the rest after that.
Thank you. Do either Sarah or Femi want to come in before I open it up? Okay, great. So again, if you could say who you are, which organisation you represent, and we've only got about 5 minutes, so please keep your questions, fairly articulate and to the point. We've got one here in the middle, please.
Hi, I'm Sally Holt from the Brilliant Club. Thank you for the shout out, Simon.
I'll collect them.
I was just wondering what the panel thought about the challenges that are presented by more difficult to reach schools, for example, rural and coastal areas, and how partnerships can be made meaningful and ongoing, as you said, Simon, in those areas, and how we give the same provision to all our pupils, regardless of where they live.
Okay, thank you. And there was one from a lady in the cream jacket here.
Hello, I'm Carol Portman-Smith from the Brunel University Urban Scholars Programme. One of the partnerships that doesn't seem to have been mentioned very much is the partnerships with parents. Given the huge body of research on the impact that this can have, can you tell us something about how you have tried to engage parents?
Lovely, thank you. So Femi, I might start with you on the question about hard-to-reach schools and what you think some of the challenges and solutions might be there.
I think in terms of those widening participation students there, you've got to think about where they are and how they feel about themselves. If you're in a coastal area or in an area that where people don't go to university, you've got to think those students don't know that, and the issues, the things that you do, which bring them in, have to be interesting to them, have to be meet them where they are. And they may not have the support of parents, or may want to support those students but have no idea how to do so. So you probably, I think, would need to work with parents, bring them in, try to introduce them to the goals you're trying to achieve. And then also with students, most students are ambitious, and sometimes we talk about people not having ambition. Most people do. It's just that that isn't unlocked, and you need to find creative ways of doing that, and giving students confidence in terms that they can go places, and the fact they're in a coastal area doesn't mean that's where they're condemned to be there. So it is information about what can you do, where can you be. Often role models are important for those particular types of students. Who from that community has left that area? What type of things have they done? And what type of contact have you made with parents in terms of helping them encourage their young people? So I think it's really being positive about the fact that, as I say, most people want to go somewhere, want to do something, want to have positive things in their lives, and starting from there.
Thank you. Sarah, on either hard-to-reach schools or working with parents?
So I'd take the hard-to-reach schools. So I'm working with Inter-University. They have opened in Clacton and Weston-super-Mare. So I think there is a commitment to go there, but I think what you need to recognise is it's going to be more expensive as a charity to operate there and to be able to give the same service. You might be further from a university. You may be unlikely to have a hub there, so your costs are not going to go down because you're operating sort of 3 centres. But the need is there, but I think we need to think about the funding model. It's going to be more expensive to reach there, but I think it's a more expensive model, but they're sort of the same issues.
Thank you. Simon, any thoughts on working with parents in
yeah, both of those two things I think really go together. I think the parents is a really, really, really good point, because I think about our academies in Birmingham. There's students there who go off to university, often go to the University of Aston, University of Birmingham. Quite a few stay living at home. If you're in a rural and coastal region, that is not really going to be an option in a lot of cases. Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, that really isn't going to be an option. You don't have the same. Well, I taught in Bethnal Green, right down the road. All of my kids came to London, and a lot of them stayed living at home. And I think when you're talking to parents, it's very, very important, I think, in sort of rural, sort of coastal regions, to take into account that they are going to have to be more confident in the fact that their students can financially survive somewhere else. They're going to have to be more confident about the student loan schemes, about accommodation and the wraparound pastoral side of university than a student that lives in a slightly bigger urban area. And I just think those two things really need to link about. The parents in rural coastal regions need to be much more reassured about the benefits of university and the wraparound pastoral care while they're there.
Thank you. And Anand, how does Brightside reach out to schools in hard-to-reach areas?
Well, in a sense, the delivery model for Brightside lends itself quite well to reaching hard-to-reach areas, because the whole idea is to connect people regardless of where they're physically based, to break down the barriers of logistics. So, again, over the last few years, because we work with using an online mentoring model, we have focused on so-called hard-to-reach areas and have worked in parts of the world, Isle of Sheppey, Isle of Wight, Lake District, and so on. So the delivery model lends itself quite well to that. We still have the challenges of building long-term relationships with the school, so it involves a large travel budget and lots of people going out to areas. Ideally, what I'd like to get to through the schools network is having long-term relationships with these schools and having people that are permanently based in the communities and in the local areas. But the demands of project-based funding militate against that. So that's something that I'm keen to do.
And finally, Nikki, working with parents of older young people, if you see what I mean, how do you go about that?
I think transition is the real key. Getting transition right. From a parent's point of view, I think of the feedback we have is that they're so used to having a really regular narrative with a conversation with the schools. When they young people come into college life, it's a sudden change for them. They have all this freedom. There isn't a bell necessarily. They can go at lunchtime, and actually they don't always come back for maths and English after McDonald's, and that's quite a big problem for us that we're looking to tackle. But talking to parents and being open about the offer that we have, about the partners that we're working with, and we find actually that partners coming in on those transition meetings is a real key for us to be able to allow that student to do the best that they can, because the trust is already there. And I think sometimes parents, from an FE point of view, really struggle a little bit to come into that environment, because then they don't feel comfortable with it at all. In our local area, there's one particular ward where parents' reading age is an average of 7. So we do struggle with our communication. We haven't got it right, and we're trying to make it better. But I do think that transition point is really what we have to get right at the beginning, and our partners really help us do that.
Thank you very much. I'm really sorry, but that's all the time we have for the panel. I'm being told that lunch is ready, but that is an opportunity for all of you to network. So thank you again to our great panellists.
Thank you.